Well, gang, let's say you've got yourself a Catalyst 3850 switch or maybe a 5760 WLC, and you're ready to get it up and running. You're ready to configure it. You've done the physical part. You've gone ahead and created the connection to the console port. You've got your application open. Maybe it's PuTTY or something like that with the correct baud and bit and everything else. And when you initially plug that in, you press enter, you're like, oh, look, it's a device and it's prompting me saying, would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog? Because this, like pretty much every other iOS device that you work with, gives you the option of quick initial configuration. Now you can say no to this. You don't have to say yes. You can type in no. You'll get a blank configuration and everything you do will be done through Cisco iOS commands. But this environment gives you the option to do some basic initial configuration using prompts instead of commands. In other words, I don't have to know the Cisco iOS language. I simply can follow the prompts and to things like, what host name would you like for this device to be? If you don't come up with one, I'm going to call it switch. This must be a 3850. So that's what it's going to give you, is prompt-based interaction. So some of the other things that it's going to ask you along the way, again, it does ask you important things like the host name, right? Got to know what the host name of the device is. It will also ask you some other things along the way. It'll ask you your, the enable mode secret, right? So how do we get access to the privileged enable mode? It'll also ask you about VTY passwords. So do we want to enable telnet or secure shell access? And if so, what kind of password will we use? So at this point, it's not setting up username password, but just direct password access. You can go into more advanced modes to configure that. Country codes, the country code for this device that will enable verification of country access and is used for some grouping mechanisms. SNMP, if you're using an SMP device, so what community string are we using there? And then it'll ask us about the management VLAN and the IP address of the VLAN interface. So we get these virtual interfaces, right, that we use to manage the device. So what VLAN is our management VLAN in which a management console will be connecting and do it. So in other words, if I'm going to support Telnet, Secure Shell, or even HTTP in order to manage this device, what VLAN will that be on? Now, for this configuration, it's important to know that what we're talking about here is wired only if we're connecting to a switch, all right? A switch, these Catalyst 3850 switch, they support the module for wireless LAN control, but it's not enabled by default. And this setup initialization environment does not give me the option to configure that. But I get a very similar set of options here: management VLAN, interface, but I'm going to get this twice. Right? I'm going to get it once for wired and once for wireless. So when you're working with a wireless LAN controller, it knows that I might need to connect through a wireless point of access in order to communicate with it. So what's the wireless management VLAN, and then what's the wired one as well. So that's both are supported. So these are the things you're going to see as we talk about this initial configuration dialog box. If you configure it and then you finish it, you're not done. You've just got a device that now is able to be managed. And that's really all we're talking about, is you've given it enough brains, enough headspace in order to support various different types of management protocols so that we can further do what we need to do.